as part of it, like that people may not fully register what it looks like if they haven't been part of the situation. But maybe that's so well understood that it doesn't need to be said. But I just, as the kind of non-US person here, I just thought maybe I'm not 100% sure I understand the context fully from a US perspective.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it could be different because we had David on the call and he's no longer, he doesn't have the time to be a part of this, but it was interesting to get his perspective because he had a very different perspective on what we all have seen, you know, here in the States in regards to ageism. But I think, defining the status quo and what that is and what we think that is. And a lot of that is like what you said, it is a lot of the not calling out the nuances in people's aging journeys and, you know, and kind of having this ageist approach of like, if you're older adult, you get a chair class because you're older. And, but I do think like highlighting that status quo for each of these topics is going to be important. Like, this is the status quo, this is what's wrong, and this is how we feel like a new vision is. Like, I think that's kind of like the two subtopics. And Patricia, it looks like were you gonna?
Yeah, I just wanted to, when you're ready, I just wanted to put my hand up to respond. I think in our messy document, we do have what I think we're aiming at is trying to identify what we see in the world that we think is not optimal, that we want to advocate for change. And I think we're all different, and some of us live in Canada and so on. So we're seeing different things. So I think we were not aiming to paint a nuanced, full picture of like, this is what our society is doing everywhere. But it's more like, we see this, we see that, we see this, and we think this is harmful. We think this is not optimal. And it's real examples, either from us or from our research. And then we say, okay, this is what we see in the world, but we're also seeing positive things in the world. We're also seeing good examples. And so we're saying, these are the negative examples, and these are the positive examples. And maybe we have other positive examples that we would like to see. I think it's kind of shaping up like that, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like that's part of like we can use specific examples. Like, I know I've written about this. These are things that I've specifically seen. I don't know how widespread those things are. It's just like one incident, you know, where you talk to a professional and they, you know, they have these certain views, and so it is like it's anecdotal. But I would like to see if we could bring in some more, you know, research around this too, to kind of speak to this at a higher level of
I think this is just like a discussion. I think that would be a beautiful, different paper to say, like, what is the landscape of ageism in the fitness industry in the US or in North America, and really try to quantify it and analyze it. But I'm not seeing that we can do that big picture in our
for this paper.
Yeah. No, and I guess, I'm not thinking broader, like assuming that we're kind of really looking at like the senior fitness class as the event and what are practices that happen in that to keep it confined versus like all kinds of fitness or all kinds of interventions might be one way to retain the scope. But Erin, I think it raises a good point. So much of the work like is done solo, right? You're the only instructor, right? Like all education, like you're the one of instructor. And if you're really motivated, you may talk to 2 or 3 other peers. But I think there's a way to, bring into the conversation like what is going on here with practice. If there's a lot of interest, if by the end we feel we really need to dig into research or literature and do a follow-up, sure, but that makes total sense to me. But to kind of elevate it from this is what I do to like what is practice, like what do we know about what's happening?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I feel pretty confident saying like a lot of chair exercise classes you show seniors like that. It's like kind of this thing that chair yoga or chair exercise is for older adults. Like I don't know how much research we would need about that, but I mean, that's seen commonly, things like that. And not including them in all different aspects of programming. Um,
And I certainly have received, there's a local senior center. I'm often doing open houses and things as a trades booth. And I had one woman sort of just exclaim like, can't we just work out? I don't want to have to be recovering from something, because it was like cancer recovery or, arthritis, management or she goes, I just want to work out.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Jen.
To Cheryl's point, I've been thinking about this and your point is well taken. I mean, if we're writing, this is a white paper on this is what we want to see happen, we have to at least address why we feel it's important to address it and why change is important. Um, so that needs so that does need to be looked at and does need to be addressed. Does it need to be 15 pages long before we get into it? No, it doesn't. But at least what informed our desire to write this and why we think change is important. And it's come out, just in this brief conversation we've had so far, and the last two meetings we've had, the incredible diversity in our aging population at this point. From and that what we're seeing now is chronicity and chronic illness being diagnosed at younger ages. I mean, the obesity epidemic, and it isn't just in seniors. So to really sort of pigeonhole people into what we once thought, Orange Theory. If you're 25, you go to Orange Theory. If you're 65, you go to Silver Sneaker class or whatever. And that just doesn't hold true anymore across a population as far as I'm concerned and what I see out there as well.
Mhm. Yeah. I let me see. I really liked what I don't know if this was like I don't know who's wait, hold on. Let me try to find it. This document is just keeps growing and growing.
Yes.
We had okay, yeah, the values. To me, I thought like the values and objectives we promote, to me, that kind of condensed down our topics. To me, I kind of saw that. So it was like equal respect for people of all ages and abilities, um, acceptance of each person's dignity of choice. I'm just kind of summarizing them, focusing on ability and not age for classes. So not rather than senior fitness. This is like Laura used this great example last time, Cheryl. She said yoga for the stiff and terrified. I love that so much. But there's no age to that. Like there's just, it makes it inviting for people that might be intimidated by it. And then creating a safe continuum. To me, like those values and objectives, I feel like can kind of create the outline of our of the paper.
I think the topic that really stands out to me is the expansion of the physical possibilities, which, especially after just hearing the values you just stated, I think that fits right into that particular topic. From my perspective, you know, I am much, in some ways, very much like the Tai Chi instructor who when he thinks about ageism, he mentioned that that's not something that he sees where he's from, right? I think you alluded to him earlier. Where I come from it is I see people in that demographic who are doing things that no one thinks is possible. And so my view, my perspective is a little bit jaded because if you tell me that they shouldn't be doing it, I can show you 10 people who are currently doing it and doing it better than any 20-year-old. And so what I'm really excited, especially for that topic, is to maybe be able to take more of a narrative approach to this and meeting with folks that have them share their stories with me. And especially since I have access to these senior living communities and athletes who may be in that demographic. And I don't know if we've already defined that, but what's the age frame that we're looking to bracket our conversations around? Because that's probably my biggest struggle is I work with college students sometimes, and to them, I'm the old guy on the block, right? And so what's the bracket that we're looking for? I get older, they stay between 18 and 21, and so I'm just trying to figure out what's that age demographic that when we're alluding to them in our paper, who are we identifying in that particular core group?
That's a great question.
And
I
I had this conversation with my wife just now in the van and our ride home. I was like, I remember when we were trying to have our second child, and you were like, listen, I'm almost considered a geriatric pregnancy. And I was like, what does that even mean? It's like, well, at 35, that's when you're considered geriatric pregnancy. And so it's like, for me in my research, I gotta really bracket this. What's the demographic? What's the target age demographic we're looking at here?
yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Jen.
Oh, I was just kind of nodding. It's a very out there in the literature and among the in Jerry land out there. It's very difficult to actually define this. Demographers have done like young old, middle old, oldest old. The whole number of 65, which is sort of stuck in our head, is actually based on absolutely no scientific research whatsoever. It actually came from, Europe in the last century and sort of stuck as this number out there, but it means nothing as far as biology and physiology is concerned. And so it's a really difficult question to answer. What is an older adult or what is the geriatric population? It's not an easy question. And so a lot of people will just say 60 and above, 65 and above, 70 and above. I mean, so people will just do a cutoff, and that's the demographic they choose. Because there's nothing in biology or physiology that gives you a number.
Yeah. And maybe that's the weigh-in for the paper, is to say, in fact, it's arbitrary.
It's
And
very arbitrary.
and people arbitrarily, like a 35-year geriatric, want to be parent, and at 75 you can be an athlete. Like
Exactly. And when we say, well, chronicity, geriatric syndromes, when we talk about the geriatric syndromes and then chronicity, but what we're seeing now is that we're seeing that in much younger people than we used to see those things in. So it's really a free-for-all out there at this point.
I think this is a fascinating thing for us to think about, like who is impacted by ageism. And how about the young people who's told they're having a geriatric pregnancy? Like, whoa, that's a negative, right? It shouldn't be. It's just a medical term. And who's impacted by internalized ageism? Like, at what point do we start to say, like, oh, I'm too old to do this, or I'm too old to start that? Like, that's a really interesting question.
Yeah, it is, and it's so relative. Like Jojo said, like he's the old guy compared to, it's all like who you are talking to, and people compare themselves
Oh,
to.
yeah. Yeah, my students think
Yeah.
I'm absolutely ancient. They just
Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
it's
in a good way.
but as I'm hearing like the different things offered, like maybe that's the service we can do to say like it's arbitrary and then pose maybe questions or something about when does age impact you? What about this, example or this example, like to just demonstrate the sheer variability that can happen. So, like we don't have to resolve that, just point to it.
mhm,
Right.
Yeah,
mhm,
and that's what brings us back to what our original premise was really looking at someone's ability, not their age, as far as, what they do,
mhm,
and what they
mhm.
can do and how to,
Yeah. It's like we use in the strength community and training community in general. It's you have your chronological age, but you also have your training age, right? And
Mhm.
those can be really, really different. And what we're talking about here is what determines if you're considered old. Is it your chronological age, or is it your lack of ability to do said task?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
which that could be a whole nother topic, but I really like the idea of being able to kind of paint a picture of what people in this particular population, what they're actually doing versus what you think they should be doing. Um,
Yes,
because
yes.
that then may be able to lead into some other areas. Um, kind of challenge what people are thinking right off the bat, and then be able to
Mhm,
build from there.
yeah,
Because
mhm,
there's just so many amazing stories that are out there, and I have the privilege of hearing on a pretty regular basis, and train people to prepare for stuff. It would just be amazing to like put those stories out there, and then and challenge people's thoughts process.
yeah,
mhm,
totally.
Mhm.
I train with a 74-year-old man in Aikido, so his training age is about 5 years.
Hmm.
And he's getting better and better at rolling. Like it's amazing to watch, the stiff
mhm,
old person who's starting to get super fluid.
mhm. That's cool. I heard this term once in a podcast called structural aging. So we're not tying it to an age, a number, but people's bodies, like you were saying, Jen, like there's this health crisis with younger people. But I think we've all seen this. We've seen younger people walk with shallow steps and kind of like a frail walk, and they're young because their bodies have kind of taken on this different structure, so it's like a structural aging,
Yeah.
and it has nothing to do with their chronological age. It's just the way their shape their body has taken based on their lack of activity or the activities that they're doing. And I thought that was a really interesting way to frame it, um, rather than saying like you walk like an old person, like you have a gait that's shallow, you have a gait that's maybe hunched over, and it can happen at any age. And I think like honoring that it's not restricted to a certain chronological age.
Yeah, and I would say the sort of generalized trend of sedentaryism, like just
Mhm,
how sedentary we've become, even for people that work out regularly, but then they're sedentary the rest
mhm,
of their day. You see, I think I hadn't heard that term, but I mean, I'm seeing that in clients, the permanent screen tilt. And
mhm,
so, 30-year-olds that have starting to get a hump in their neck because most of their day is spent hanging their head ahead of the axis of their spine. So, yeah.
I,
mhm,
I I'm sure Jen can testify to this, but when you're on a college campus, you see so much of exactly what you're talking about, Aaron. Folks who others may consider, hey, you're not aging very well right now. And we see folks who are just kind of doing nothing, and they have access to everything fitness and wellness related, but they're not using it, and you can see it right away in their gait, in their posture, and just how it's affecting their overall outlook.
mhm. And I think the other thing to recognize is that like there's the disease process for some people. Like, I mean, we're talking about like what people are actually doing versus what we think that they should be doing. And, you know, I've used this example. I've had a friend who was a competitive bodybuilder in the 1960s. He was a PE teacher. He taught wrestling. Like he was just like physical activity defined his life. And he got diagnosed with ALS. So it's like, you know, nobody's like, you know, that can happen to those of us that are trying to stay active. And so
Right.
like, how does he define a meaningful life now when so much of it was defined by
Mhm.
physical activity?
Mhm.
And to witness that was really interesting for me. But it's like, how do we honor those journeys and like not tie aging well to being fit?
Right.
Um,
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
so, okay. Laura, I haven't heard from you. I don't know if you're taking notes, but I know you think very deeply about these things.
Taking some notes.
Okay.
What strikes me, well, the whole conversation is, I think, critical, and we've got a lot of threads. But what strikes me is I like the phrase aging journey. So instead of aging well or aging youthfully or whatever horrible term we can come up with, it's very narrowly based. I like this idea of aging journey and what is your aging journey? There are things that we can control that help us in our aging journey, depending on what our goals are. And there are things that we don't control, like your friend that got ALS, that was diagnosed with ALS. And changing your identity when it's been such a part of you for so many years is really hard. That happens in when people retire as well, or when they change professions, or when there's an injury that they can't do, like a ballet dancer who can no longer dance, or any dancer can no longer dance. So those are tough situations. Um, I like the idea of, as Jen and Jarl were talking about the baseline. I think it's really important to know where we're starting from. If we've got a white paper that we want to change the narrative, I think it's really important that we paint a picture, we tell a story of where are we? Why are we even saying that these things we want change? So where are we? Where do we want to go? Why do we want to go there? And I think that overwhelmingly, at least from what I'm hearing and what I personally feel, we want to go there because we want people to feel like um we want to honor and respect their ability to self-determine the dignity of choice that Patricia was talking about, as well as offer them other options. That we have super agers, which is great. We have people who are doing amazing physical things, but for the 93% of women over 65 who don't do anything even close to the 150 minutes of cardio or the weight training, you know, that there are choices, and that we're here to help those choices. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Mhm.
Mhm.
Can I just, I love the idea of aging journey. There's no judgment on that. And that to me what is incredible because that can be applied across the continuum
Correct.
of I had a conversation, or an ongoing conversation with my students this past semester, it just ended. And one of the things that their very last discussion forum, their discussion board, they had to talk about sort of how their philosophy had changed throughout this course that I taught. And I did a thematic analysis. And anyway, what came through very clearly is that they were beginning to look at their own aging journey, just as you described, and that many of them were saying, you know, I am going to start adding weight resistance. I am going to start really focusing on, um, and that they had never realized before how important it is to start young versus waiting, and sort of what aging actually meant, that it wasn't that you just woke up on your 65th birthday and you are now old, that it really is quite the journey. And there's a lot of things that you do have some control over, not everything. So I really love that piece of it very much.
That is awesome. Yes. Yes. Just real quick, Laura, is your book Find Your Movement?
No, mind your
Find
movement.
Your Movement. Sorry, Mind Your Movement.
Yep, 6 essential physical and mental tools to stay active as you age.
as many conversations as we've had or been a part of together over the past couple of months, I am just learning that. It is now in my Amazon cart.
Oh, thank you so much. And anybody who does read the book, I love your feedback, good, bad, or ugly. You can share your feedback with me.
Just withholding information is all I'm pointing out.
Yeah, well, I asked her to shamelessly promote, please, like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I love it. And I
Yeah.
love the book. And I love what
Mhm.
Jen just said too. So yeah, the journey, that is wonderful without the judgment. So Jen, this is a great point that people about looking at your journey. And I think people hesitate to look at that journey with compassion and empowerment because there's shame around the aging journey. And there's also this sense of inevitability, like there's nothing I can do about it. So those are both things that we, whether in this paper or just as a group of professionals, we're trying to work against.
Mhm.
One of the nice things about calling it an aging journey is that you can then have lots of subtopics. So if you decide to do more white papers after this, you could posit the first one as aging journey. Changing the narrative is changing how people think about aging journeys. You can include younger people, older people. We don't have to narrowly define the demographic. Maybe, Jojo, maybe. We can still define it, but we don't have to because it's human lifespan.
Right.
Possibly.
Yeah.
And after you do the generalist paper, if this is the way we want to go, this is just one idea, a generalist white paper on this idea of aging journeys, then we can have the subtopics of the more narrow, specifics. Just
love
one
it.
way of
I love it.
conceptualizing it.
That's awesome.
There
That
is
is
no
awesome.
non-aging human. Everyone is
Yeah,
aging.
Right.
Yeah, 4-year-olds
From
are
birth
aging
onward.
also. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Birth onward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that idea. Holy smokes.
Mhm.
So is like, Laura, are you saying like the first paper is just this general idea of the aging journey concept and language?
It's just one, so it's a choice of a
Mhm.
structure. Doesn't have to be the end all and be all, but yes, that's what I'm saying. And that if we choose to do other white papers, we can have very specific topics after that under this heading. I love when things, so this is me, I love when things support one another. There's a coherence to, or a theme, or however you want to phrase it, of thought process. So it's not like something's over here and it's one thought about changing the narrative, and then there's a thought over here that's kind of like they're very separate and very discrete. I like when they support one another because then it gets amplified for us, but it also gets amplified in the reader. Like they hear sort of the same themes, but maybe said in a different way or in a different arena. Anyway, that's my
No,
creative process.
no, and I love that because I do love how when things are coherent, there's a different buzz, right, to how it works. I've heard from, I think everybody here talk about story or narrative. I'm wondering if we should use that as part of the frame to sort of query what people's narrative is about the aging journey, share stories about the aging journey, but also, speak to how people's stories about it actually changes how people age, and there's some pretty good research. It's been a while since I've looked at it, but the nature of like just people referring to themselves in certain ways will actually change physiological outcomes in their health.
Yeah,
So
that's that self-identity. That's the identity that you have in your head about, well, what you were saying, Erin, about your friend who was, athletic or physical all his life, and then he has this very debilitating disease, and how that changes his view of himself and his self-label.
And there has been research on that, and I'm completely blanking on the name of the book about how we think about our own aging influences how we actually do age. And what is the name of it?
Breaking the
Becca
age
Levy,
code.
Breaking
Thank
the
you.
Age
Break,
Code.
breaking the age code.
thank
Yes.
Say it again,
Yeah.
please.
Breaking the Age Code by
Oh, yeah,
Becca Levy.
Becca
I don't know how
Levy.
to say
Yeah.
Mhm.
Levy. I don't know how to say
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Really, really valuable research.
Mhm.
And I think so.
Okay.
This is what and I think us as people that are working with an older demographic can influence that. I mean,
Mhm.
people have their own stories, but I think this
Mhm.
is part of when
Yes.
we're charting like how we could do things differently. And I've talked about this is like it's how we talk to them, the words that we use, how we are treating them. So we're not treating them like they're a fragile person. But I think that that's what we need to speak to. Like this is, we have these stories that people are sharing with us, which I love about their experience of their aging process. But if we have a different vision for what's possible, like we can start holding space for possibility with them.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. You
Man.
And we're
totally describe what I do.
Yeah, well, and that's actually language that I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you probably maybe I heard it from a podcast guest, and she's like, "We hold space for possibility for the people we work with," and I love that so much. It's so it just so eloquently captures, I think, what we try to do.
Well, and to speak to your point about like what their possibility is. So when someone comes with brain injury and we're working, we're working towards what that possibility is, and not having a preconceived notion about what is it because they have, or because of Parkinson's, or because of it is an exploration to see what is possible given this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Don't we offer hope? Don't all,
Mhm.
fitness and wellness professionals offer hope that things can be different in some fashion, whatever the different is? I mean,
Mhm.
why are people helpers? Why do people go into helping professions? It's because they think that they can be a change agent for the person that they're helping. And
Mhm.
not in I mean, certainly there are negative ways of being a change agent, but in the best possible scenario, it's hope that things can be different or better, however you phrase that.
Yes, and I think that's something that we could speak to too. It's like, I mean, I've had experiences with myself doing this where you think you're helping people, but you're actually not.
Mhm.
And you kind of realize it, like, oh,
Yeah.
I thought I was like, helping this person, but I'm actually like taking away their autonomy.
Mhm.
And I've totally made that mistake myself. So I think calling that out, because like you just don't realize it until sometimes the people you work with call you out on it, and you're like, yep, I'm not doing what I what I thought I was.
Well, and no, I'm so glad you brought that back in, because I'm wondering if adding curiosity to the values, like to ask, not, help by assumption, right?
definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. What do we call that in motivational interviewing? The writing reflex.
Yeah, the writing reflex. Yeah,
Yeah.
our IGHT. Yeah. And then we're talking about hope and possibility, like they can be a master's athlete with JoJo, and Aaron won't just give them the pink dumbbells. But on the other hand, if they are having a very slow journey, if they're having setbacks, if they're having issues, we still have full respect for that. This is their journey. They're taking it in their own way. They have reasons that we may not know or understand, but we can respect the full continuum.
I just find so much power in that aging journey. That's like to me, I keep saying that, and it looks like the cover of a magazine, the title of a magazine that just continues on and on and on. Oh man, there's just so much you can do with that framework and not having to set a defined age group with that.
Mm.
Oh man, that's amazing.
So
That's
somebody needs
amazing.
to grab that as a website, and somebody needs
Right
to have that as a
now.
podcast.
Right.
It's a
Yes,
good phrase.
aging journey. Yes.
Mm.
So I will tell you something that's similar is like these are two good examples that I shared in my outline is two ladies that are that I've interviewed, they have a Dynamic Aging for Life magazine. And their whole idea of dynamic aging is it's challenging the stereotypes, but also addressing the side that dynamic aging isn't always about like physical activity, but what happens when you have a disease, whether you're diagnosed with ALS or Parkinson's. Like, how do you pivot? How do you find new identity? How do you find more meaning in life? And so they use dynamic aging, which I think is also really cool and kind of a cool term. And then Oldster Magazine. I don't know if you know Oldster Magazine, but it's a Substack. And her little, I don't know if you call it tagline or how she describes it, is Oldster Magazine, exploring what it means to travel through time in a human body. I think that's cool. I just think those two ways are just really cool ways of just, having language around aging that's not, that's positive and like neutralized.
How do you spell Oldster? Is it just as it sounds?
Yeah, Oldster. And she interviews a lot of different people, and just gets their aging journey. It's really interesting. But I just love that, exploring what it means to travel through time in a human body.
It's very, very visual, isn't it?
Yeah, with
It
a
is.
slight tint of like a Doctor Who something,
Yeah. Exactly.
This is my TARDIS, like, yeah.
And has she been a guest on your podcast?
She has not. No, I would love to have her. Is it Sari or Sari? Sorry, Patricia, I know you
Yeah, I
follow
don't know
her.
how to say it.
Sorry.
Botten. Yeah, I don't know how to. Botton is her last name, right?
Bodden, yeah, sorry, Bodden.
Yeah, but it's not really, her work isn't really about fitness in any way. It's just about, it's more philosophical, personal, but she would be an awesome guest for
She
Erin.
did a podcast interview talking kind of like challenging about this whole aging well thing. And like, so many times it's like aging well is paired with people that are fit, and
Right.
like super aging. It's like, oh, and it's like these athletes that are like 6-pack abs and they're 65 or whatever. And it's like, why are we always pairing those terms with being fit? And I think that's something, again, a whole other rich
Right.
topic. But yeah, she had some great perspectives on that.
All right, ladies, I'm going to hop off and go pick up my daughter. It's been a
Okay.
pleasure. Thank you so much.
Happy
See you guys
holidays.
soon.
Yeah.
Happy
safe.
holidays,
Thanks,
Jojo.
Jojo, for
Bye-bye.
jumping on.
Thank you,
Um,
Jojo. Take
You're
care.
welcome. Talk to you soon.
All right, see ya. I love these conversations so much. I don't know what our next steps are for the paper, but we just have such great conversations around this. And it's so hard I feel like, to narrow it to one thing and make sure that we're not getting too far in the weeds and other things. But I really like, Laura, what you said about aging journey and having that as that general term and having subtopics underneath that. So feel free to jump in. Like, where do we see this going from here based on this conversation?
Well, you said at the beginning that our topic is respecting diverse aging journeys. So aging journey, it's in there. I think for a while yet, we keep adding to the mess, and then we start the massaging process. Like, okay, what fits together, what flows, what do we keep, what do we save for another paper?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm wondering too, like just having done a lot of project collaborative work, would it be helpful to do a straw dog of, based on the conversation today, here's a suggested outline for the first paper without losing any of the diverging adding ideas, but just to say, like, if we assume a white paper is going to be like, I don't know even what length assumption people are talking, like would be digestible as a paper. Like, is this 5 to 10 pages, 10 to 15 pages?
Well,
I know,
have you been reading our document?
well, I've looked at it, yes.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry, does that detail, is it there, or?
I don't
No,
think we
I mean,
defined
we
a
sort
length.
of have a messy outline. So I didn't know if you were meaning like to start again with a clean outline or
Well,
what you were.
So like, I guess, so the white paper topic outline, changing the narrative, it kind of has everything. And, and so to work with this outline, so number 4 is respecting diverse aging. What if,
Right. Okay. I see what you're saying. Like at the very beginning of that document, it does have all the topics, but then we
yeah,
chose one. We chose one of those topics.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then we're kind of disregarding the other ones for now. And then we started adding, based on that topic, we started, and it has like little subheadings, and then we started adding things to those subheadings, but it is
yeah.
messy.
No, and I guess I'm just wondering if it's worth, rather than, because I guess what I heard was to continue just to add, and I'm going to actually propose the opposite. What if we tried a discipline of let's define something and then see how that goes, just because the reaction to it often I find brings a group closer, rather than the sort of let's just add and add and add and at some point it'll emerge. In my experience, it rarely does. Because group editing doesn't work that well. Like, yeah.
Well, no, definitely. I agree with you completely.
Mhm.
But we haven't heard from everybody yet.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So what Erin asked us to do, and I admit that I didn't follow her instructions exactly either, was to pick a subtopic and outline it. So each person on the team should pick a subtopic and put on like what we want to say about it.
Okay.
So that was where we were going. Now maybe we're not going there very well.
Mhm.
Uh,
Well,
and then we
I-
probably need a new document that has
Mhm.
more of a bare bones instead of all the paragraphs.
Yeah, maybe that. Yeah, and I'm sorry, I've not been part of the all. So, and for sure, if people haven't just been able to join yet in person, of course, we want their perspectives included.
Well, they've been in the meetings, but we were hoping everybody would contribute something to the document saying like, this aspect interests me and this is what I want to contribute to.
Yeah.
And we kind of are not fully there
Yeah. I mean, I know
yet.
for me, I kind of threw something up, but like I have to be honest, without kind of understanding a bit more the focus and the scope, I just can't volunteer for stuff. That's kind of could
Yeah,
be wide open, because I can contribute sometime, but not tons.
Right. Well, that's what the idea was, that you take a small aspect
Yeah.
and you put your brilliance into it. But it
yeah.
sounds like we need a clearer, well, first of all, this document has all those other topics in it. It's a mess to look at.
Yeah. I
And
kind of
then
think,
Laura wrote a beautiful long segment about language, which is
Mhm.
awesome. But then it's not really clear what the structure of the document
Yeah.
is. It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of
Well,
think it's,
clearly I didn't follow the directions either because mine's not an outline. I just thought, I don't know what I heard, but I thought, okay, I'm supposed to choose the topic and write a little article that could be included in the white paper. So off I went. So that's how that ended up.
yeah. I kind of think it's both. I feel like we're kind of chiseling away at this every time we meet. I think we're kind of narrowing our scope a little bit more each time. So in some ways, I feel like after this meeting, I think we've narrowed it even more. And so for those that haven't contributed what they wanted to add to this, I think it's worth communicating to them like this is how we're narrowing our scope even more. So any addition you have, like keep it within these confines, because I think like it's just so
Mhm.
easy to get I mean, to just have this to take so many different directions that yeah, it's kind of like a how do we get both where we're staying narrow but we're not like getting so many like because it feels like a brainstorm session where there's like tons of ideas and they're all great and like, but how do we just stick with one? And so everybody's contributing just to that like narrow area.
Mhm. Yeah, and so I guess my suggestion, and it doesn't have to fly, would be to kind of revisit the ideas to cover and see,
Mhm.
can we do a next iteration of
Mhm.
this that's kind of, because I heard, just feeding back from, Laura, what is your aging journey, the narratives on aging journey, the kind of values, around respect, dignity of choice, offering options, the role of the fitness professional in how we influence what's viewed as possible. Like some of those things almost feel like headings to
Mhm.
me, like that maybe then we could, flesh out or say, I'd be willing to kind of put some meat or tofu or whatever, like whatever.
Yeah, it almost feels like we started with this great big huge funnel. We just threw all kinds of things in this funnel, and now it's kind of beginning to coalesce a little bit.
Mhm.
And I agree with what Cheryl is saying. I mean, instead of continuing to just add to this huge unwieldy document, to maybe begin to um, narrow it down or focus it a little bit more based on the conversations that we're having. Does that?
Well,
Yeah.
I think we need both, and I think we need a clean outline,
Mm-hmm.
and then people can
Yes.
say like, this is what I really love, and I want to help here. But
Mm-hmm.
then we need a messy document where they actually start putting things in, because we're going to be like repeating and
Yeah.
finding that things don't fit. So the editors need to look at the big mess and massage it into,
Yeah.
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 But so the next step is to create this outline. So does
Yeah.
anyone want to do that? Or I'm willing to try it.
So I have a silly question. My silly question is, what is the overriding idea that we're running with out of all these wonderful ideas that we've discussed and all the different aspects? What is the thing?
Well, it's respecting diverse aging journeys. If that's
Is that our thing?
but I mean, it's within the fitness industry and so on.
Yeah, I would say it's
I'm just
respecting
asking. I'm
diverse.
not
Yeah.
disagreeing.
Yeah,
I'm just
no,
asking.
no.
Respecting diverse aging journeys. And again, within that, we can have multiple papers underneath that. But I think like kind of Laura, what you were saying, that's like if we can just kind of have that as our big topic and like worry about doing all those other papers underneath, like I think that should be our focus.
And is it like, because I sort of understood from our conversation, like maybe one key message was the role of the fitness professional to influence what's possible, um, in a active aging journey.
Right. Yeah. So I guess,
So,
yeah.
Oh, okay. Like
sorry.
pivoting to that as our main
Mhm.
point.
But that seems like a
Well,
subtopic.
But that's our
Yeah, that's
audience,
the subtopic.
right? Like we're
Mhm.
not talking about aging generally and philosophically. We're talking about it from a peer practice.
Right.
So respecting diverse aging journeys in fitness. Is that an okay working title?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
fitness. And I mean, do we want to add in physical activity too? Because I think fitness, I feel like fitness
Yeah,
really
right. We
narrows you
got to
to
play
like
with those
gym
words.
activity. And it's like, I don't know if we just want to say physical activity because I feel like that kind of encompasses fitness as well. And it's a little bit more
That's
broader
fine.
term.
Yeah.
I'm
Fitness,
just trying to get
a lot
the
of
key
connotation.
ideas. Sorry,
Oh.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just agreeing with Aaron. I think the word fitness has a lot of connotations to it, and people react to it depending on their own experience within this world. And again, the importance of language, Laura, that you have so eloquently talked about, and really trying to keep our language very neutral and without judgment. I almost see sort of this big, huge umbrella, that were not big, huge, but this umbrella concept that we have, and then all the things that might come under this umbrella, and that it could represent several different kinds of papers, but this is our overarching value, respecting diversity in aging journeys within the, health and wellness world or physical activity world or whatever.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
I vote for that. All of that. I like that.
And I think we're talking about classes and offerings in a kind of a specific way. Not like we're not talking about pickleball teams necessarily. We're talking about something that's offered to people as
No,
a class or a, don't you think? Or
I don't, from my vantage point, I don't feel like that because pickleball is a physical activity. So if you're using physical activity, that's not limited to classes unless we choose to limit it.
well, I know, but yeah, I mean, I agree with you about the that we want to combat ageism there too. But the white paper, we're talking like this is what we know and this is what we can share, our perspective, our stories, and our recommendations. Do you see what I mean? Like
No,
we're coming from a specific perspective as the kind of professionals that we are.
Well,
but we're
if I
not
could,
all limited. Go ahead, Cheryl.
no, I just like to kind of go in a writerly path. So for our audience are fitness professionals working with people experiencing aging, which, you know, arguably could be everybody. Then what kind of are we looking for? You know, some one way to look is like what kind of change are we looking for in terms of their awareness, knowledge, skills? Like, and by
Mm-hmm.
the end, but after reading the white paper, our audience will, you know, I'll just throw out stuff off the top of it, like question what their practice has been around
Mm-hmm.
the aging journey and physical activity. You know, become aware of different perspectives, you know, at least one more perspective about the aging journey and physical activity. Like just, you know, like though like I guess as a writer, I'm always sort of like, what's my job here? Because there's so many directions and to sort of sometimes these questions are, you know, help like, okay, we're headed there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think to be really clear on what is our goal, is even if we write multiple white papers for each one,
Yeah,
what is
yeah,
our
yeah.
goal with this?
Mhm,
What is the
mhm.
objective here that the reader should be left with?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, because the challenge is there's so much. I mean, God, like as I listen to everybody's expertise, it's like, oh my, we could fill stadiums of, you know, knowledge and experience, but maybe it's not about us. It's about like the audience we want to serve with this.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I just meant you mentioned the phrase the role of the fitness professional or
Mhm.
that's the kind of people we're talking about. I guess pickleball wasn't a good example, but like we're not talking about a hiking club or something. That is physical activity, but we're really aiming at people who offer
Mm.
physical activity, whether it's classes or training or that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not resonating with you guys.
Well, I'm wondering about like anybody who stands up in front of a group of people and guides them through activity is our audience because they
I would say.
influence
Yeah.
Mhm.
what people's experience and perceptions of their experience are.
All right. So it's
Yeah.
not the fitness professional. It's
Well, it's within that. I mean, I think fitness professionals
Mhm.
are within that. I just think it's more
Right.
broad. So it's whether people are coaching a sport or their personal training.
Mhm.
So I know we're a little over. I like the idea of having a fresh new outline and then people contributing to it. I know that's what we did last time, but I feel like again we're keep narrowing this down. I think it's going to take some iterations to really get us down to like exactly what we want to talk about. And those that didn't join the call can see like, okay, this is our more narrow scope, and then jump in on what they want to contribute to. What do you
Well, I
think?
volunteer to make a thing, and then
Okay.
everybody can critique and change the thing any way they want.
Okay.
Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah, that
Yeah, thank
sounds
you for doing
Thank you.
that. Sure.
because I mean,
Don't
yeah,
you won't hurt my feelings if you just
no,
completely
no,
erase, half of it. So I'll just because it needs to be out there, and we can just
yeah,
do
no. I mean,
what
like
we feel.
to me, these conversations are so productive because writing is a process for which all of the assumptions you haven't really kicked the tires on, all of a sudden like come out. And
Yes.
so the benefit of a group is we can talk about like what is core, like what do we think is most valuable or important or to say, because writing's a lot of work, and so it's good to really focus it on something we really care about.
And I think the conversation around target audience is really important too. I mean, that we're really clear on who we are directing this to.
Yeah.
Really important.
Great.
This is all good. I've taken some notes. I've just been they're not super thorough, but I've added it to our white paper topic outline. And I mean, feel free if anybody else wants to add to it, but Patricia, I would just hand it off to you if you want to create an outline from that, and we can go from there.
You put it in our document?
I added it to our
Okay.
document. Yeah,
All right.
I could put a little note in there to you so you know where it's at. It is.
So I'll make a new document that's very clean and just an outline with none of that other stuff in it. And then if you share it with everybody, I'll share it with you, Erin, and
Sure.
make sure it gets shared with everybody.
Well,
Okay.
and let's keep this one because we should never,
Yeah.
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
good, like
Yeah,
the challenge is there's so much goodness, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, we could
Right.
label them in some like round 1, round 2,
Yeah.
Yeah.
draft 2, so we
Yeah.
have the various iterations that we
Yeah.
save our work that we've done.
because we might go,
Right.
oh, wait a minute, version 3.
Right, we want to go back.
That we
Yeah.
edited out, and
Yes.
now it's crucial. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Perfect.
All right.
Cool.
This sounds great. I so appreciate all of you. I really love these conversations. I just am excited to see where this goes in the new year. So we're not meeting again until the new year. Let me just look at the schedule. I think it's the week of, no, let me see. No. Oh, wow. Okay. I don't know if I have a meeting for us until, I don't have a task force meeting for us. Okay, I'll get those scheduled for the new year.
Okay.
I had an outline, but I'll make sure I send those meeting requests out. So goal is every other week. And then end of February, we'll have something to
Okay.
go to the world. Ideally, but this is fluid. This is all first time. So we'll just kind of roll with it and see what works. But I appreciate those of you that
Respecting-
have been in collaborative projects. Guys.
Really,
Respecting
thanks,
diverse
Patricia.
writing journeys.
Good one. Happy holidays, everybody.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Enjoy, everyone.
Thanks.
Care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.